Okay, today we're here in Prattville, Alabama, and we're doing an interview with Oaky Woods legend, Harvey Rackley. Harvey, how you doing today?
I'm doing great after that great introduction.
Harvey was born in Oaky Woods in 1925, is that right?
I was born in 1927 on a farm that bordered the Oaky River and Big Grocery Creek.
Okay,
And by the way, the Indian name was Big Groose, Goosey.
okay,
And we had that sort of analyzed at the University of Florida, and they thought it meant Big Grove or Big Group.
okay. How did it get twisted to Grocery Creek?
Pardon?
How did it get twisted around to Grocery?
I have no idea when it was changed to Grocery Creek.
We might have messed that up. Somewhere.
And that's not all. Thompson Mill Creek was at the time called Piney Woods Creek.
Okay,
The reason I know that is that I have the original survey that the owners time evolved, and they had better transportation and more population. They might move a road to a better place.
right.
And you have to bear that in mind as you're thinking of that area.
Okay,
Uh,
all right.
and
I tell you what, Harvey, let's kind of stop there for a second.
Yeah.
And let me introduce Danny Wilson, who is here with us today from Perry, Georgia. He loves to tromp Oaky Woods, and we've had many good times down there. And we got Brent Speth. He's our pilot and another Oaky Woods admirer, and we've been tromping around the woods and looking at all the historical places and really have enjoyed it already. So we were talking to you on the phone the other day from Oaky Woods, and Brent made this trip happen. So we're grateful for him for doing that today. Now, Danny, I think you got some questions you wanted to ask while we were here, right?
I do.
okay.
Mr. Rackley, what was the typical table fare growing up in the Oaky Woods at that time? What?
The typical table fare varied from wild game to fish to the multitudes of various vegetables that were grown in the big vegetable garden, plus the cornbread which we grew and it carried our own corn to the mill to make our cornbread, and fish, of course. My father was William Lester Rackley. He was born in 1896. And my mother's name was Annie Watson Rackley, who was from Monroe County. She was also born in 1896. And they were married somewhere around Forsyth and in 1897. And they came in a wagon that very fall, first to cross on the other side of the river to a place called Cary, Georgia. Some of my father's older brother-in-laws and kindred were over there. They came there for 1 year. Then they crossed the river into Houston County and lived in what is now Peach County for a year or two, and then back then they moved around a lot, wherever they could find land to work or a house to live in. Now that strayed a good bit from the table fare, isn't it?
That's okay, but you're doing good.
We also butchered our own hogs and had plenty of milk and butter. And Mother had as much land as she wanted for free-range chickens, and we had plenty of eggs and chickens, and I would say that during the Great Depression, we never had a shortage of food. We had a shortage of money, but we didn't have a shortage of food. There was always plenty on the table, and my mother was a great cook.
Yeah.
She loved to cook, and she had a big family. There were 8 of us children, and I was right in the middle,
Okay.
the 5th child, and some of the older ones, well, if they were bossy, I had to stay out of the way, and the smaller ones, I had to stay out of their way because they would tattle on me. But as a boy, I actually had too much freedom. As long as I did my chores and came to the house for meals and to sleep, they didn't care where I was. I can remember going down to the boat landing at the Oaky River, which, by the way, was about 3/4 of a mile down the hill from our house. And I can remember many times going down there by myself, and I had to be awfully young because we moved away from that house when I was 11.
Okay.
We moved just down the river. The farm at the Flowing Well joined land with that, and my daddy took over that farm to manage it.
Okay.
And I lived there until 1945, when Uncle Sam sent my notice to be drafted in the Army. And if you want me to continue this, I'll tell you that when my military service was over and I came home, everybody had moved out, and Oaky Woods was being taken over by the timber corporations, which have evolved to what you know of Oaky Woods to be now. And I didn't realize the value and beauty of that land at that time, but later I did. And I love the land, and as long as I was able, I like to go back there and hike and look around at the historical things. That had a great history to it, because that was the first road to come into Houston County, and they had a ferry down there. If you want to know the prices that they charged for the ferry, they're listed in Bobby Nelson's book, A Land So Dedicated.
Okay.
The prices that they charge for the ferry. And anyway, the pioneers were waiting in Twiggs and Wilkinson County to come over. Ron once found the statistics where the population across the river, the decade before the western side was opened, increased 10,000, and the decade after, it decreased 10,000. That means
That makes sense. They all moved.
all those people flooded across, and that was the main road in west toward Perry. Of course, with so many people, there was not enough land to go around, and it wasn't long till they were out around Kathleen and Perry and points west. Now, those first people who came over got the big plots of land. That was the beginning of what I call the plantation development age, when someone would have a big block of land and he would have to have help to work it. And of course, they had slaves before the Civil War, and after the Civil War, the plantation era faded away, and some of the descendants of the families held on to the land, and much later, as it became, as the land developed and times changed, one such family was the Brown family, and the descendants of that family were Jerry Davis and his family. And they held on to land out around, as you know, around Kathleen and Houston Lake. And another family was the Story family. There was an early doctor, Story, who operated from his home at the Kathleen, and he left his land to his two sons, John and Jim Story. Now, John's plot of land was down in Oaky Woods, further down that road from where the fire tower is. That was John Story's land down that way. And Jim, his brother, inherited the land out around Kathleen. And there was also a family named Barnes, and the Whites, and the Davidson family, who settled around Bon Air. And there were three of those Davidson brothers who all had land down toward Oaky Woods, but not in Oaky Woods. Mr. Rule Davidson was the Davidson who was prominent in Oaky Woods.
Now, he had the water pump there, didn't he, Harvey?
Sir?
Didn't Rule have the water pump running up to his house?
The ram pump?
The ram pump?
Rule on the lease or on the land where the ram pump is.
Right.
And by the way, I meant to tell you, there was another home down there that had a ram. It was, are you familiar with the area where the Kathleen Road and the Thompson Mill Road that heads to Bon Air separate?
Yes.
There was a big white house up there in the forks of that road, and down the bluff behind it there was a spring, and they also had a ram. My uncle at one time later lived there, and I recall as a boy visiting his home and hearing the water in the kitchen sink dripping, in which it was so near the end of its days at that time, he kept the water bucket under it and let it drip all the time.
Right.
My house also had I don't recall them having a toilet, but they did have a bathtub.
Yeah.
And
We were down there just the other day and showed Danny the old ram pump site, and most of it's gone now, and the pump itself is gone, but some of the pipe is still there.
yeah, they ran that pipe. It must have been a quarter of a mile up over the road to the house.
It's amazing that it would run.
At the Davidson house.
That's right. That's right.
Yes.
Now,
That was very interesting, the way that the early pioneers came in there and what they worked with. And I don't want to forget that the road, I've told you about the road going east and west from Twiggs County to Perry. The river road came up from toward Hawkinsville and crossed at that house where you were interested in studying,
yes.
and went on up and came into Thompson Mill Road and went on toward Bon Air. That's the road that President Jefferson Davis was brought when he was captured and carried up that road as a prisoner.
Yeah, Thompson Mill Road, right?
I understand he spent a night near Bon Air at someone's home there, and from there went on north. And that road, at the point that you were studying, was a crossroad for, you might say, the highway at the time. It was the transportation was a wagon and carriage and buggy, and the carriage routes developed through there. Of course, people
Right.
wanted to travel,
Yeah.
and also I don't know the year that the steamboats were invented, but they also began to carry goods up and down the river from Macon to Darien.
Right.
And then, of course, later on, I'm guessing it's sometime around 1880, the railroad came along there, and of course, the railroad put a stop to the river trade, and
Just took it over,
also
did it?
much
Yeah.
of the carriage trade, and those old roads began to fade away, and
Right.
newer roads were built out farther west as the population
Moved
moved
out.
west.
Okay. Now, Harvey, Danny had a few questions he wanted to
All
put
right.
to you, so let's go to that section, okay?
Mr. Harvey, at your second home site, where we have been kind of looking around, it's actually on some new land acquired by the Oaky Woods. You used to play with, when you were young, there's a foundation out there that's really big. What was that?
Well, Bobby Tuggle and I have studied over that, and of course I remember it as a boy playing on it, and it was not growing up with weeds and bushes at that time. It was open,
Yes, sir.
and in fact, my dad's pasture for the domestic family cattle that we milked came very near there, but yeah, when I would say about 8 or 9 or 10, when Santa Claus would bring me I remember particularly one little truck about so long, and I would just tie a string to it and pull it up down that like it was a highway.
Yes, sir.
And unless there was a foundation for a building for the stagecoach horses to be kept and changed out, I don't know what it was. I will state that there were 3 barns on that home site. Other than that, there was up near where the original home site was, there was an older log barn where they shed on the side of it, which I always presumed was the carriage house. It was big enough for one horse, and then the shelter for the carriage. And then there was a smaller barn just downhill a little ways, where the family dairy cows were kept and milked and put out to pasture and so forth. And further down the hill south was a very long barn, and the fence from that barn was headed. The whole swamp was a fence. The fence went just to the river,
Yes, sir.
and the livestock could go freely all out in the area, and it was also used as a storage place for the corn and hay. And so I guess that was just a barn for the use of the plantation,
Okay.
because they had to have horses and mules, and that land, as I told you before, initially was divided up somehow into plots of about 1,500 acres. And I'm calling it the manor house. I've been in the house where the owner lived.
The big house. Yes, sir.
The big house. Scattered around that farm somewhere would be about 4 smaller tenement houses where the workers to farm the land. Now, the period before during slavery, I have nothing to indicate to me anything to tell you about the slaves and where they lived and worked and how they were fed.
Yes, sir.
I have no idea how they did it, but they did it some way.
Harvey, let me ask you a quick question. Right across from the foundation that you're talking about, there's
Yeah.
several piles of rocks in there. Were those like a root cellar or remnants from a building? What do you think those were?
We were always told that that was the big house
Okay,
which burned down,
okay,
and that was a cellar underneath it.
okay.
And it sounds to reason that they would want, like you say, a root cellar, a place that where things could stay a little cool.
Right. When did the house burn down?
It burned down before my memory,
Okay,
and yeah, I'm sure that it must have been during the early period of the pioneers,
okay,
because the house that we lived in was just outside of this.
yeah,
There was 4
Okay.
or 5 cedar trees planted
they're still there.
around. And I think that was for a windbreak on the north side of that first house. I'm not sure about that,
Okay,
but we used to play on those trees, and there were even at that time they were huge trees.
okay.
Yeah,
Harvey, let me ask you another question real quick here. You told me before it was your father or grandfather that had gotten bitten by a rattlesnake.
yes.
Can you tell us that?
It
quickly?
was a year that I was born, and we still lived in that farmhouse along Grocery Creek. There were 2 houses where we lived, and a little house, I'll say about 200 or 300 yards further down where my grandfather and his family lived.
Right.
And one afternoon about 3 o'clock, he was bitten by a rattlesnake, and I was told that somebody among the people had an old Model T, and the men were working further up the creek in the fields where the sugar cane was. And when the women folks finally got the men down there, they had tried to tourniquet his arm, and Dad said they just had a piece of loose baling wire. Probably they were panicky, and they took him to Perry, but the doctor at Perry told him it was too late to do any good. It had bitten him on the top of the hand, a big vein. The way it came about, the little dog, which Granddaddy knew the sound of the bark when it was a snake.
Right.
And he heard the little dog and went up there, and the dog was barking over in the bushes, and Granddaddy reached down to move a twig or a small limb or something where he could see better, and the second snake was lying there, bit him on the hand.
Wow.
So it was in September, and that's the time of year that the rattlesnakes crawl together and mate.
Right.
So September's a bad year for rattlesnakes.
And they couldn't save him. They got him to Perry, and
Yeah,
he passed away, right?
they got him to Perry, and he died. I think he died the next morning about 3 o'clock.
Yeah.
Oh, and he's buried at Houston Lake Baptist Church.
Okay. Now you told me about the carving on the tree that had the man holding the moonshine jug, and that you knew that guy.
Yeah, I knew that guy. I was a small child at that time, but I remember it was Cersei Jenkins.
Right. Your memory's better than mine.
Cersei was my first cousin.
First cousin, all right.
The story about his mother is that his father had died when Cersei was about 11 or 12 years old, and left his mother with 4 children, of which he was the oldest. And she moved in with grandmother and granddaddy, so they, when grandfather died, it left my grandmother and her daughter with 4 children as a separate household to be seen about.
Wow.
And when Cersei got old enough to work, and Mr. Davidson had let him farm some land down around, we called it the Ram Branch, the place where the ram is, a little further down the branch.
Right.
There was some smaller fields down there, and Mr. Davidson had let him work those, and he had made good down there. And I don't know the complete story. Some of the family members tell stories, and I remember another one that I was told that said he took a break in the hot afternoon to go down and bathe in the cool waters of what we called Ram Branch.
Yeah.
And of course he took pneumonia and died. And yeah, I had seen that tree myself, and looked at all those whiskey bottles, and there was also an attempt to draw a mule and pulling a plow, and I think it had his name and Kathleen, Georgia on there. And
It had a bear paw on it in the year
and the bear paw, yeah.
1933 was carved into it.
1933. So if it was 33,
8, you were 8?
I would have been 6 or 8 years old, somewhere in there.
Yes, sir. Now let me ask you, how many bears were in Oaky Woods when you were a child?
Pardon me?
How many bears, wild bears?
How many wild bears?
Yes, sir.
We never did see many. Now, I think we killed 2, and Dad, he saw another one that he didn't kill.
Right.
But we had one to come up to the house one morning while we were eating breakfast. Dad had rubbed a wild bee tree and had the honey in a metal container hanging in the shed out by the barn just outside the yard. And while we ate supper, this bear came up, smelled the honey, and Dad's little squirrel dog, who was laying under the kitchen table while we were eating, took out and just screaming and barking. And I had a 16-year-old cousin who for some reason was with us that morning. He took out after the dog, and there was a sage field just out beyond the barn, and the bear went for that, and so the dog right at the bear's heels and caught him right after the dog. And the old bear decided he would turn around and challenge this dog, and the bear stood up as Carlton ran up, and Carlton said he smelled the bear's breath on him. He came back to the house at full speed.
I bet.
He can have the honey if he wants it.
There you
So
go.
the bears at that time were not that plentiful.
Just a few around.
Because the farmers wouldn't permit it, they would kill them, because
Yes.
the bears would kill the hogs.
Yeah.
The wild,
Domestic, the hog,
Yeah.
your food hogs.
they were a predator,
Yeah.
and so I don't think also that there were deer. They had killed one spike the whole time we were down there.
So there weren't many
And
deer
there were
around, but
not-
there were a few though, right? A few kind of holding on.
There were not deer there.
Okay.
I guess every farmer that joined land, all hunted stuff like that, and I don't think they came in till after the C-46, when the timber companies moved all the people out and tore down all the houses.
Right. Yeah. Do you remember anything about finding some of these Indian artifacts?
Yes,
I know
absolutely
that
do.
we got a bunch of them.
I found this on a place called Pine Ridge. It is a place between the flood.
Is it by chance on that map?
I've got it marked here somewhere, I think.
Okay.
Uh,
And I didn't mean to cut you off. I just was
Yeah.
mentally gonna. Oh, here it is, right here, Mr. Rackley.
yeah, Pine Ridge was a high ridge over in the river swamp, where when the rivers in flood stage would run around both edges of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember the story of this this particular arrowhead, and in my later years after I retired, I had a friend named Spencer Holland who lived that period, and he had retired also. We became buddies, and hiking buddies and friends. We would take our brown bag lunch into Oaky Woods and let the tailgate of the truck down, eat our lunch, and walk mostly the logging trails. At that time they were logging, and any place the soil is disturbed, you like to find some kind of artifact. Well, this particular one was on Pine Ridge, and also I found a lot of other ones. I don't remember exactly all of them, but
That's a pretty one.
that's a beauty, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
This one was on Pine Ridge.
Now, Harvey, that one is the oldest one that Danny showed me the other day. That's a Thompson Corner Notch Point, and that one's about 7,500 years old to 8,000. So that's a really old point.
Well,
Oh, wow.
I found one
Wow.
down at where the flood line joins the Little Grocer Creek at the corner of the field. I found one that we took to the Indian Mound Museum up at Macon to have dated, and they said it was 6,000 years old.
All right. Now, where did you find this smoking pipe?
This pipe was found where Little Grocer Creek enters the high water,
Yes, sir.
the flood stage mark of the swamp of the river, right in the
Right.
corner.
Mm-hmm.
There's a field, and that was found right in the corner of Little Grocer Creek and the swamp.
Okay.
And I call it alligator eyes. If you look on the bottom of it, you'll see an effigy of an alligator.
Yes, sir. We see that. Sure do. Yep. See his eyes and his nose right there.
What an amazing find.
Yeah.
That's really neat.
The people who were plowing the fire breaks with those big deep plows turned that up, and so that's where we found that.
Now, Harvey, this is made out of soapstone, so that means it's a trade item. So somebody brought this down the river a long, long time ago, obviously, and it's got a lot of patina on it, which means it's been aged from being in that acidic soil out there. So
My daughter,
pretty interesting. But
at that time, my daughter was going to the University of Florida, and she took that to the museum at the University of Florida and had them give their opinion on it. Of course, they seem to think it was from somewhere in Florida, but I think it was from the general area where it was found, because there was an old, the remains of an old lake along the edge of the river swamp there.
right. Mm-hmm.
That was still called Alligator Lake. And so,
Right. Yeah, well, like I said, it's made out of soapstone, and the closest soapstone is around Atlanta and around Track Rock up in the North Georgia mountains.
I named it Alligator Eyes.
Alligator eyes, okay.
What an incredible find.
I see why.
So, I do not remember the rest of these points, but it was likely that if you were walking around anywhere, you would find something and pick it up.
And we were just moving into land that Indians had lived on for years and years and years. And
And they had to be a great population of them. Now, the land where the ram is found, that cove that runs on from down there to the river,
yes, sir.
was just full of signs of where Indians had dwelt.
This is amazing, Mr. Rackley. What, where did you have a favorite place besides Pine Bluff to find them? Would you just find them?
You were likely to find them anywhere. In the fields where you cultivated them,
Yes, sir.
every time the soil was turned, and then it rained and crusted where the rocks would show up, you'd be likely to find one anywhere. Now, there was one other type found, to my memory. Dad found it further down toward the steep side of the hill going down toward the river.
Okay. From your second home site?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
And he found that we had people who would come through the area every now and then, and as children, they would give you a nickel for an arrowhead.
Okay.
So
you
made some
barter system.
made some money.
a nickel for a child back then
That's
was
real money.
So I don't know if the man gave Dad any money for the pipe, or whether he just gave it to him or not.
Yeah.
But that was only a pipe that was actually found. He did find a bead, well, about an inch and a half long, about the size of your finger. That was something very hard.
Yeah.
He tried to cut it with a file, and he said he couldn't cut it with a file.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Amazing.
but
Now, Harvey, tell us a little bit about Spring Lake. That's kind of a famous slough down there.
Spring Lake is
1932. You were on that log, caught your first fish. And that's
Yeah.
my son's in '87.
Wow.
Spring Lake was what they call an oxbow lake, where the river at one time had curved back in there, and at some time it ran through that area, and then it had been cut off and taken another
Right.
channel. That's what Spring Lake was. However, it had somewhere in the bottom of it had a spring, because it had a constant runoff toward the river
Mm-hmm.
of clear water.
Yeah. Does it ever go dry? Does Spring Lake ever go dry?
It never did go dry in those times. Now, the last time I saw it, it was nearly nothing. They had the timber around it had been clear cut, and it just looked like a mud hole.
Right. Okay.
So it was, I guess a spring gave out or something, and but in its day it was a good fishing place,
good
and
pond.
we used to go over there as a family.
Yeah. Now, of all the time that you spent in Oaky Woods, what is your fondest memory? What is the thing that you think about when you think about Oaky Woods and your fondest memory? I know you got a lot of them.
My fondest memory of Oaky Woods, I can't really pinpoint one.
There were so many good ones.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
everything was,
Just being there was special, I'm sure, and growing up in that unique environment on your own and having to make do with what you had.
yeah. I do have, I do have one fond memory of Big Grocery Creek.
Yes, sir.
Just before, before the culvert was put there to make a bridge over it, it was forded.
Right.
And just above the ford, up the creek was a pretty good elbow turn that had a good swimming hole. And several of us boys would use that as a swimming hole sometimes. And I enjoyed that. And
Yeah.
I don't know, I just enjoyed walking around and hiking around and being mystified by everything.
Right. Yeah.
I've got a question.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We know how you got your food. How did you get your water? I know you had a river, right? Did you have a well or?
We had an open well with a terracotta casing that somebody in the pioneer days sometime had dug in that, it was red clay. It was an open well, and we used a windlass with a rope to draw it by the bucket. And it was a good well. I remember only one real dry summer that it almost went dry, and we had to go to a spring down the hill below the barn to Dad cleaned the spring out where we could get clear water. We had to use that for some time until he got someone to go down in the well and clean it out and dig it a little more, and it came back into use. Now that was at the house where you are looking now.
Yes, sir.
The house that we lived in down near the flowing well had an old hand pump that drilled. So that's where we got our water for those two houses. And it was quite a chore when you had to water the
animals and
you had to draw water to water the work stock, and you had to draw water for the house and bring it in buckets and use it from the buckets. And oddly enough, it never seemed a problem until it was about to go dry.
yes, sir.
But it was, that's how we got the water. Now, you want to know about the school bus?
Yeah, tell us about the school bus.
Yes, sir.
The school bus, if it rained, turned around at the Davidson house, which are 3 miles. And if it wasn't raining, it turned around at the top of the long hill about 2 miles from home. So we walked either 2 miles or 3 miles to the school bus, and I did that myself for 5 years. So I told Ron once that I had, by the time I was 11 years old, I had walked 7,500 miles. So, but we did walk to the school bus. Now, when we moved down to the flowing well, that was 1938. the roads was not as hazardous when it rained, and the school bus came all the way down to the house.
Okay.
Now, the school bus that's there on that hill, was that an actual school bus?
That was not connected to the route of the school, the bus that carried the children. They said that somebody later got that bus and brought it down there and made it a camp.
That's what we thought, yeah. It's a landmark now.
It was not even there when I left. It
Right.
came in later.
All right.
What was your favorite spot out of the two that we've talked about, Flowing Well and what I call above the river? Or did you have a favorite of those two places to live, or were they equally awesome?
Well, it was two different periods in my life.
Yes, sir.
When I was 11 years old, I had different childish
Yes, sir. Different interests.
different thoughts than from when I was 11. From 11 on up, by the time I was 12, I was working in the field alongside the men and everything, and of course, as soon as I turned 16, well, even when I was 15, my dad had gotten a learner's license for me, and I could drive anywhere except on the main roads. I could,
Yes, sir.
anywhere in Oaky Woods on the farm, I could drive. And then, of course, when I turned 16 and got my license, I had other things in my mind.
Yes,
I
sir.
wanted to go to town.
Yes, sir.
I wanted to go to Perry and take my girls to the picture show and stuff like that.
Yes, sir.
And of course, there was a lot of work to be done on the farm, and we all participated in work. The family all participated in the work. There are certain works that the women folks didn't do, of course. They didn't plow the soil and stuff like that. They would have to chop the cotton and pick the cotton. But they had other things to do, like on wash day to wash all those clothes, and Mama washed one day a week, and it was set aside as a wash day, and her and all the girls would do the washing, and if they could find me and my brother, we would draw the water and keep the fire under the wash pot.
Yes, sir.
But and it just didn't. It was soon all over. When I left, when I came back, my folks had moved, and of course the timber companies, about 46, were buying all of the land up.
Had the land kind of been fertility-wise? Had it been run down from the cotton?
Yes.
Okay.
That's another reason the plantations failed. They didn't have commercial fertilizer, and also after the Emancipation Proclamation, they didn't have labor,
Yes, sir.
and the soil was depleted. Where, in fact, I was thinking not long ago about if you made 15 bushel of corn an acre, that was pretty good. A farmer nowadays, he might make 100 bushel an acre. And I remember about 1932, President Roosevelt began to, through the farm program, encouraged crop rotation and diversified farming, and also soil conservation. I remember they gave my dad enough Bahia seed. You know what Bahia grass?
I do.
Oh, yeah.
It was supposed to be a good fall pasture. They gave Dad enough Bahia seed to plant 8 acres of Bahia grass, and he planted it. I don't.
It's still
I bet
there.
you it's still there. Yeah.
I don't remember much of the result of it, but I do remember planting it. And also, they give him burlap bags full of kudzu sprigs.
Oh, yeah.
You know where the kudzu is nowadays.
Everywhere.
This will keep your valley together. Plant
They were paid to plant it.
There we go.
I just looked it up. And in 2021, the average yield for corn in the U.S. was 173 bushel per acre.
Wow. What a
Compared to
difference.
15.
What a difference.
Yeah, if we were lucky if we planted and grew enough corn to fill our crib to use for the as the livestock needed them, also to shell and take to the mill to get our corn meal, and for mother to get cracked corn to feed her chickens.
Mm-hmm.
And she had, as I said before, she had a lot of free-range chickens. In fact, it was not unusual for her to take a sable bag of eggs and take them to the store and trade them for something else. I think they would allow her 35 cents a dozen or something like that.
Man, it's just $5 a dozen now.
Also, there was a rolling store that some man would bring a couple of times a month through there, and he would have all sorts of things that in there that items that you couldn't produce on the farm.
Right.
And she would trade eggs for that, and it was a good service that he was doing, because there was so many farms scattered out that didn't get to the grocery store that much, and she might need pepper or salt or some kind of spice or something like that, and he carried all sorts of things for sale. And he would take almost anything for pay.
Wow.
And so I remember the rolling store. I remember looking forward to the rolling store. If I had a nickel or two where I had sold an arrowhead, I'd buy myself something.
Yes, sir.
And also, they were gathering scrap iron all over the country, and the scrap iron truck would come around maybe 2 or 3 times a year, and if you had gathered up a pile of iron, he would take it and give you a few cents for it. And so all of us children, we had our scrap iron pile
Ready to go.
Yeah, ready to go. And I heard later that Japan was buying it all up to fiber's worth.
Wonder why.
We should have sent them kudzu sprigs.
Yes.
It tells you that the earlier people all did things that required iron,
Yes, sir.
such as a horse-drawn mowing machine. Have you ever seen one of those?
I have not, Mr. Rackley. I don't think I have. Did it have
Well-
a sickle bar?
Yeah, it has
Okay.
a sickle bar. It goes back and forth like clippers, and
I have seen.
it cuts the grass. And they had things called a hay rake. And when it was cut and dried, they rig it up and haul it and put it in the barn loft to feed the livestock on. And they had all sorts of metal plows and stuff like that. Oh, and when you think about what was during the period of slavery, they worked a lot of those cotton patches around the rock piles and everything. They worked them just with hoes and rakes, and they used a lot of metal, and they left things around for us to gather up the scrap iron.
Yeah. Harvey, I'm going to ask Danny if he has any more questions. Do you have anything that you wanted to ask?
I'm good. I've enjoyed this so much, and I hope we get a chance to do it again very soon.
How about Brett? You got any questions you have?
No, thank you for sharing the time. It's been priceless. The stories are amazing.
Well, thank you for bringing my friends over, and it's good to meet you.
Yes, sir. Pleasure.
And it's really been an enjoyable time for me, and you haven't had time to eat.
Hey, we're going to get to that. That's not important. Being here with you is the important part.
I'm going to
Yep, that's what. When we do conclude, I'd love either me or you to read that. That's
I wrote
interesting.
this when I had the picture of these cedar
Okay.
trees, which I remember so well.
Okay. I'm ready if you are.
As long as I can live. One of my first memories was coming to this house. I was 2 years old, and I remember riding in the back of this rattly old truck with a few pieces of furniture and some more children coming up to the house. And when they stopped at the house, all the rest of the I must have been the smallest child, because all the rest of them jumped out of the truck, was gone, and I'm left standing there. And just off to the left, there was a pecan orchard that came up to the yard. It was this time of year when the leaves had fallen and dried, and I went out in the pecan orchard, and I remember kicking through the leaves, and these trees looked the same when I moved there as they did when I left. And so I wrote this: only God can make a tree. This was written by Joyce Kilman, and he was born in 1886 and died in 1918 at the Second Battle of the Marne in the First World War.
Yes, sir.
And I wrote down here, Kathleen, Georgia, January 2012. This majestic cedar tree, almost 200 years old, still stands where it stood at the family home place of Lester and Annie Rackley during the Great Depression. It provided a playground for children and on hot days, a pleasant shade for anyone. But time moves on, and many of those who enjoyed the grand old tree have gone now, battered and stripped naked by time and Tom's stormy blast. It too seems poised to say farewell, farewell at last.
Very nice. Thank you so much for sharing that.
So,
Thank you for sharing everything. It's
Well,
been an enjoyable time.